Welcome to our first session in English. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, this initiative, the reason behind it is because Quantits recently opened an office in the USA, and we want to share some of the approaches we use in our projects. We have done more than 250 projects for different industries, different sectors. You think about retailers, wholesalers, distributors, different types of manufacturers, uh, also services, financial services, and other types of services. And some of this experience, that's what we want to share with you today. I thank all the Brazilian audience with us tonight, but the event is going to be entirely in English, so stay with me to get some of the insights that I urge you to get. Because every time I attend a training session, one thing that I want to walk away of it is with an idea that I can feel that it's implementable, or in other words, something that I can really use in my day-to-day life or in my day-to-day business activities. So the goal here is really to share ideas and insights that you can implement in your business. Well, just to introduce myself, my name is Fred Zornig. I've been working with pricing for the last 25 years. Out of those 17 running quantities, we have done work for, like I said, different countries as well. As you can see, the flag here, the Portuguese flag, it's because I'm Brazilian. My first language is Portuguese. I also share some knowledge in Spanish because of my wife, who is Chilean. And English is going to be like my third language. And why I'm saying that? Because when I'm speaking in Portuguese, I can guarantee everybody understands what I say. I hope all my English is going to be good enough for you to understand. If you're following me until now, I think we're going to be okay until the end of the session, okay? And let's move to our agenda. I'm going to be very objective because I just have 1 hour and I have 7 topics to cover. And I use 7 topics because 7 is my lucky number. So I want to make a very nice session tonight. The first one is going to be pricing strategy. So I'm going to briefly explain what we understand pricing is and some aspects that we feel that are important for you to think about when we are talking about pricing strategy. Then we are going to move to customer segmentation. And here we are going to go beyond the basics, let's put this way. We are going to assess how we can use customer behavior or consumer behavior to segment your market. The third item of tonight is going to be pricing methods, especially value-based pricing. And what I can say is that to use value-based pricing is very powerful, but it's not for everyone. And I'm going to show when and how you can use it effectively. Number 4 is commercial policies. This is something that's really not very well explored for many companies. And by commercial policies, think about how you negotiate your prices with your customers. That's the idea here, is to bring a strategic piece to this negotiation. And I'm going to share some examples and how you can move toward that direction. Number 5 is price elasticity. Price elasticity is important. For those of you that are in the B2B business, you may say, okay, Fred, but it's very difficult to measure. And I agree. It's much easier to measure when you're in the B2C side, where you change price and you see the demand reacting. That's not always the case for the B2B side. But again, the idea here is to get at least an idea on how your product is sensible to price changes. Is really price sensitive or not? It's important for us to understand at least how does it react. And I'm going to show some perspectives on how we are using it into the market. Number 6 is all about dynamic prices. This is getting more important. We all experienced during the pandemic all this raw material volatility. And I was talking with a person that in the mattress business, that he was saying that in the US, that he had like for 5 years the same price list for their products. It's 5 years. And he had to be changing prices in a much more frequent basis after the pandemic. So the idea here is really how we can behave in terms of price management in a more dynamic market. And we are going to show some approaches during the event. And number 7, it's very important. And why is that? Because what's the value of ideas that are not implemented? The value is 0. So the idea here is really to show you that if you cannot implement something, either a price initiative or any other initiative in any business, the value of it's 0. So make sure that the ideas that you're going to get is going to be implemented into the market. So with this agenda, I'm going to start today's session with 3 questions, okay? And we are going to use this as a simplification of how mature is your pricing process, okay? And you're going to be answering to yourself, not to me, of course, but be frank with your answers, okay? So my first question to you is, can you say or can you tell for which price you sold your products to your customers in the last month or in the last year easily? And I mean, in a very comfortable way. I mean, you can just click a button and see the numbers, and you can be confident that's the right number that you're seeing there. If you're saying yes to that, that's great. You already have control of your data, you have information. That's very important. Some companies are still not even there, okay? But that's the basics. Question number 2, can you tell me how many sales you lost during the last period? It can be last month or last year or what have you. It can be quotes that you did not win. It can be sales that you lost because the consumer decided to buy another product. Do you track that? Do you have this information in your business? If you say yes to that, that's great. You can do some price demand curves or bid response curves, and you can be very proactive in terms of finding the right price for your products. Okay, so if you say yes to that, that's a very good sign that you're down the road in terms of pricing maturity. And now the third question, and that's really the toughest one. Most companies that I ask this question say no to me. I hope some of you can say yes. And if you say yes to the 3 questions that I'm making, probably don't even need my presentation. But if you say no to 1 or 2 or even the 3 of them, I would suggest you stay. Okay, so the third question, can you say if the price you sold your products are the maximum price that customers were willing to pay? Again, I'm going to repeat that. Can you guarantee or can you affirm that the price you sold your products or services were sold at the maximum price that the customer was willing to pay to you? And that's the most important question to be answered, because if you say yes to that, then you are optimizing your prices already. If you say no, I cannot affirm that, I do not know, then you have still an opportunity to improve what you're doing. So with that said, let's start. First with pricing and pricing strategy. So what is pricing in our view, in our vision? Actually, pricing, for many companies, pricing is just to set a price list. Or for some companies, okay, what's going to be my price positioning across channels or things like that. Okay, that's a very basic thing to do, right? Our view is that price is a more comprehensive task that a company has, and it goes through those 6 steps that we are showing here. We always start with pricing strategy. We must know where we are going, and we are going to cover that with more detail during this presentation. Then we move to price setting. Which method do you use to define your price or price list? Then you have to execute your price, and here we are going to talk about commercial policies, because that's how you really implement your strategy into the market. Then number 4, you start to monitor that. Okay, which are the KPIs you use? Which data do you use? Which price studies do you use? Price surveys and things like that. So we are going to mention some of those, including price elasticity. Number 5 is governance. So do you have a pricing structure in place? What's their roles? What are their responsibilities? Are they there to make decisions? Are they there just supporting business? What are they doing in your company? And on top of that, how do you track exceptions and things like that? So think about guaranteeing that everything that you set before, your strategy, your price setting, your commercial policies, are being executed. And number 6, is technology. So I can say that companies that are very mature in terms of price management are already using some sort of software, pricing software. The thing here that I think it's kind of new is that many companies are still thinking of price software something that I buy, not something that I will build. And what I can say is that, okay, if you're opening or if you're in a new airline, I would recommend you buy a pricing software because it's already proven. Most companies, airline companies, use the same solution, so you are fine to go and get the same type of pricing software to support your operations. But on the other hand, if you are really a company that does not have a very clear direction in terms of which is the best pricing software out there, you may be able to develop your own. Think about Amazon. Do you think Amazon uses any retail software, pricing software in the market, or they build their own? So, but nowadays you do not need to be Amazon to develop your own algorithm of pricing. So there's a lot of knowledge out there. There's artificial intelligence that's accessible now, so you don't have to invest lots of money to develop something unique for your own company, using your own intelligence and keeping it to you to become like a competitive advantage to your business. So think about that as well. Now, moving towards the direction of pricing strategy, what do we have to take into consideration to define your pricing strategy? Well, the analysis starts with your customers. You have to understand and know who your customers are, why they buy from you, what are their behavior with you, their buying behavior with you. So there's a very famous phrase from Jeff Bezos that he says, our focus is to our customers, not to our competitors. Think about how impactful is that, because many companies prioritize everything that your competition is doing, and that's a big mistake. You should prioritize who to understand, to better understand who your customers are and why they're buying from you, right? That's what going to make you a difference. Using Amazon again as an example, they understand very clear that the need for people that were buying online was what? Speed of delivery. I want my products as fast as you can get it to me. That's why in certain cities in the US, you can receive goods in a few hours after you buy online from them. So that's the idea behind really understanding your customers and why they buy from you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Second point, your company. So you have to understand what your company is all about. Are we a differentiated company? Do you have many services? We invest in marketing. What do we do as a company? And our pricing strategy should be aligned with what we're doing. So if we are a premium product company, we are able to charge a premium price. On the other hand, if my company is just thinking about economies of scale, volume, market share, well, probably then you may be able to be successful using a low price strategy because of everything that you can guarantee just focusing on efficiency, right? So you have to know what your company is all about. Number 3 is competitors. And for competitors, what's important here is really to figure out who is your main competitor. It's very common for me that companies think about the market. Actually, there's a myth that many people say that, oh, the market sets the price. For me, that's true only if you're selling oil, soy, wheat, stocks. Then definitely the market's going to set the price, and you as the seller or the producer, you decide if I'm going to sell or not for that price. That's the only decision you can make. On the other hand, if you have the power to make a price decision, what price I'm going to charge to each and every customer of ours, then you're not talking anymore about a commodity. It may be a commoditized product that many competitors have similar alternatives, but our challenge then is to define, okay, who of those competitors have the next best alternative of what I'm selling. The idea here is, okay, if not from me, my customers would be buying from whom? And you can define whom is your next best alternative actually through analytics. The technique is going to be cross elasticity. So if you have the data, once a competitor lowers their price, how much does that impact your sales, for example, or vice versa? So we have to understand those correlations to define who I'm competing against. Okay, and then you also have to take into consideration external factors. Some countries are more complex than others in terms of tax and other factors, in terms of laws, compliance, and things like that. That's important for you to follow, but that's not the main topic of this presentation. Well, now talking about price strategy or company strategy. Once we did a survey here, and like 70 something percent answered that the most important decision in terms of price strategy was to say if I'm going to go towards market share or volume. And that's a big classic. And I'm not saying that's not important. Definitely that's important, but that by far is not the most important question that you have to take into consideration to define your price strategy, and not the only one. You have to many things to think about. For example, are you going to publish your price or are you going to negotiate your prices? Because if you're going to publish your prices, it's very important that you have a very clear way to define your price list and a very good way to communicate it to the market, right? On the other hand, if you're going to negotiate it, maybe it's more important for you to create the right incentives to negotiate the price. And then not necessarily your price list is going to be that important anymore. Another issue that you may face to define your price strategy is this price that I'm establishing is going to be one single price through all my customer segments and all my channels. That's what we are calling omni-channel pricing, for example. Or am I going to segment or charge different prices for different channels of sale? So another strategic question that you may answer. Third one, am I going to be, or can I be the price leader? Probably if you are the market share leader, you are able to do so. Or if you are the second player, a very strong second player, you can also try to do this price leadership role. Or you're going to be just a price follower and keep follow the price leader into the market. More questions. Think about your product life cycle. And with that, your strategy. So I'm introducing a new product into the market. Am I going to use a penetration pricing strategy, low, and bring as much customers as I can since the beginning? Or I'm going to do skimming pricing, where I'm going to start high and then I'm going to decrease prices to bring more customer over time. So that's also related to short and long-term strategy that can be different. Another question. Am I going to use local prices, or if I'm a global company, or global prices, and creating fences to avoid that the low-paying regions are going to sell to the high-paying regions, for example. And I have seen situations like that. A company that used to sell auto parts, and they have manufacturing facilities in India, in Brazil, in the US, and the companies were really quoting from all their plants across the globe and getting from the lowest bidder, even though we're the same company. So that's a clear lack of governance or organization in terms of country as well. So am I going to use global prices or local prices? And again, many discussions that you may have in terms of strategy, but once you define it, it has to be fully aligned, starting from your company strategy to your business unit. Define your pricing strategy, align with those, and then your commercial policies and your final price negotiation. Okay. Well, let's move to the second topic, customer segmentation. And what's the objective of segmenting your market or your customer? Well, the thing is, I can prove that mathematically that if you decide to charge one single price for your entire market, you're going to leave money on the table. It may make sense for certain brands, especially the premium brands, to have that price positioning, the same price for everybody. But again, they know that they may be missing some volume by doing so, or in other circumstances, they may be leaving some money on the table because customers may perceive value differently. Some of them do not see all that value to pay that much that you're charging one single price, and they're not going to buy from you. and other customers are going to buy for that price, feeling that they're making a good deal because they see more value than what they're paying. And that's the reason why we believe that by segmenting your market, segmenting your prices, are going to be able to capture more value. Okay, actually, we did a project that we moved from one single price for the entire country to really different prices by segment and by channel and by region. And actually, we brought like tens of thousands of dollars in 1 year by just segmenting the prices into the market. And then one question, true or false? Our products or services have the same value to our clients. Just take a look on the pictures. That always water with very different perspectives in terms of perceived value and willingness to pay from customers in those different situations. So the answer obviously is no. It's perceived differently, and that brings some implications. For example, which customers we will serve? If we're doing that correctly, some customers we are not going to serve anymore because they don't see the value that we want them to capture, and it's okay to lose some customers when you're doing pricing right. Number two, with which products or service? So you can also segment your products. You may think about a product line. You can improve your product or make a versioning, a better, good, better, best strategy in terms of product segmentation or services. You can include more or less services to create different perspectives in terms of value. And then you have to define what is the right price for each and every one of those segments. One discussion that's very common and is that many companies feel that their product is getting commoditized. So what's a commoditized product? That a product that is very similar to many other alternatives into the market. And what we try to do is really to find ways to segment through services. I can give an example as well. We did a work with an imaging company, imaging equipment company in the past, where we create bundles of products and services. For example, the simple most alternative was just buy the equipment. But then you can add extended guarantee, you can add maintenance contracts, you can add servicing or operating the machine for you. So we could create many different bundles of products and services, definitely with different prices, tackling or giving alternatives for different market segments that were willing to pay more for better service, or customers that were just looking for the lowest price. That's the idea when I'm talking about segment your services to your market. And the final point for segmentation, which I think it's really a great opportunity for many companies, is that you should go beyond what we call the traditional segmentation. What's the traditional segmentation? If you're talking about consumers, usually the companies are going, the B2C companies are going to say, male, female, age, income level, region, zip code, things like that. Is that enough? I can guarantee you no, because you may have customers with the same characteristics in terms of demographics, but with a completely different buying behavior. The same for B2B. It's usually you can see, oh, that's by channel. Oh, that's my online, that's my distributor, that's my wholesaler, large retailer, so on and so forth. But then again, inside each and every segment that you structure, you may see different buying behaviors from the B2B side as well. You may think about it and then think about your own business now. If you're in the B2B, you may say, okay, I have a segment that's called large retailers, for example. But inside that, you may say 100 companies are in that segment. And you may see very different buying behaviors from you. And by buying behaviors, you may say, okay, do I need a survey to figure that out? No, you have this information inside your sales data. How you can do that? Well, think about a matrix and just two variables. One, average selling price and the actual price paid by each customer, okay? And number two, frequency of purchase. In both, you get the average. So average selling price, if the customers that are paying higher than your average selling price, they do not pressure for price, okay? What does that mean? Well, that means that they value what you're selling to them. Okay, so they like what you're selling and they accept the price easier than the other segments. And then on the opposite side are the customers that are paying lower than the average selling price. Those are the usually they are price sensitive and they're just going to buy at lower prices. Okay, and then you take a look on the frequency. Let's say that you sell on average six times in a year. 12 months, you sell 6 times, that's the average. So customers that are buying 12, 15, 20 times a year, they're very frequent. Well, I can guarantee you customers that pay higher than average price and buy frequently from you, they are your loyal customers. And then you may say, but Fred, shouldn't loyal customers get the lowest price? No, never. That's a big mistake that many companies do as well. They think they have to reward their loyal customers with lower price. That's wrong. You have to capture value with them. They have to shield those guys, those customers against competition, serve them better, get to know them and protect for them to keep buying from you at higher average selling prices and with frequency. Those are your loyal customers. Just the opposite, the price buyer. Who is the price buyer? The price buyer is the one who's going to pay always a low price compared to your average selling price and not very frequently. Why is that? Because he's just going to buy from you when you are promoting or when you're giving away too much price. That's your price-oriented customer. Do we want to keep that customer with us? I always say it depends. It depends if you can protect the higher paying customers to see those prices that you do. And if you have capacity and if you're making additional dollars for that sale. In that regard, you may think about keeping those customers with you. Otherwise, those are the good customers for you to give away to your competition. Okay. The value seeker. What's the value seeker? Well, they buy frequently from you, but usually they buy a price a little bit lower than average. What can we do to them? Well, we try to move those guys to the loyal customer, try to understand them, what they value, how can we improve to serve them better, and try to bring those prices up through upsell or other strategies. And the convenience buyer, here it's another interesting situation because many companies, they're paying high prices, but they do not buy very often. They buy because they need. They buy because they have to have this product right now. So they're not complaining about pricing at all. They just need to get access to the product or the service. And many companies believe that by reducing those prices, they're going to be more frequent. That's not the case. Those are the customers that prefer to buy from somebody else. But when they have any problems there, they come to us. And then they do not complain about price. So think about that. That's definitely a simplification. You can use other variables to create this buying behavior depending on your business, but that's the goal here. And being very honest, a pricing strategy that just addresses the customer segment based on characteristics, it's going to be ineffective because it does not take into consideration customer behavior. So think about that. Let's move to pricing methods and value-based pricing. Well, very straightforward. That's very basic. What we are calling primitive here is the simple most way of setting prices, which is just a cost plus, a markup, or a target margin. How do you know if you're using this one? Just think about where you start your pricing process. If you start from your cost, either your manufacturing cost or if you're a retailer, your purchase cost, then you're using this method. What's the beauty of it? The beauty of it is that it's very simple. It also guarantees some targets in terms of results, okay? But the bad side of it is that you're just looking inside your own firm. You may be leaving money on the table or you may be charging too much. And you're not going to know it before you use those prices into the market. So there are opportunities to do better. I understand many companies still use it. Because of its simplicity. It does not take much effort to create a price list by using this method. But let's move on and think about the reactive. What I'm calling reactive here is based on the market. But again, remember what I say about next best alternative. So the best way to use reactive pricing approach is really to focus on your main competitor. That's what really matters. What's the positioning you have to have against that specific player, specific competitor that I'm competing against? And again, here I need some analytics. I'm going to show how we do it later on, because it's based on cross elasticity. So it's also related to elasticity that you can define who you are competing with. And then after that, you pretty much ignore the other competitors. I remember one project that we're doing here that a company was following like 14 players. And we were talking about like number one or number two were our customer. When you're comparing yourself to 10 other players, come on, think about your purchase decisions. Think about any category you want. Which brand comes to your mind? And then you think about, probably have a second option as well, maybe a third. Then if I ask you for the fourth brand, you may be struggling already, because usually we are just comparing 1, 2, maximum 3 players for any decisions. In my case, B2B, how common it is for me to participate in bids where it's just 3 players, our consulting against other 2. That's the norm. That's what most companies do, most consumers do as well. So think about that. We have to really figure out with whom I'm competing against. Well, and then moving forward, then we start to have what I call adaptative pricing approach. And what is that? That's really towards value, because we are very proud of our companies. We believe we have differentiated products or services. But when the rubber hits the road, we start to be more flexible, because you have to meet quota at the end of the quarter and things like that. And you do not sustain the price you want to capture out of the market in certain circumstances. And then that's what we call adaptative. Because what's really value-based, and to be really value-based, first of all, you have to have a clear differentiation against your competitor. Again, something, the word I like here is actually unique. You have to have something unique that just your company has. Because if it's something very similar, I remember also in projects that we did, executives of companies saying, oh, but my product is differentiated, you have this and this attribute. And then when they're going to test into the market through surveys, customers were always replying to us, we see no difference. It's the same performance, same output. So it has to be really something unique that you can capture value out of it. Also, you have to be very sophisticated in terms of how you are going to understand this differentiation. And for the B2B, especially for the B2B, to measure it. How can I measure it? And I'm going to show some examples on how you can think about measuring it. Number 3, you have to sustain your pricing power. That's the ability for you to raise prices and your volume is not going to drop. That's also related to very low elasticity in terms of product characteristics, price volume characteristics. So think about that as well. And finally, process maturity. What does that mean? You are going to refrain from reducing your prices in a negotiation, or because this quarter I'm not meeting quota, or things like that. You have to be very strong on that to sustain your value-based proposition. So what I can say is not for everyone. Not everybody is ready to do so. Not everybody has those differentiations that sustain their positioning. So are you able to do so or not? Good question, right? How we try to assess this value to customer or to consumers. Let's start with consumers. Well, we have to move from attributes. For example, bike, well, lighter body. What does that brings in terms of benefits for a consumer? And from that benefit, what value it creates to your consumer. That's important. And remembering that consumer are more subjective. So you can explore ranges of prices, perceptions in a much easier way, let's put it this way, than for B2B. And why is that? B2B is more objective, quantitative. You have to prove, you have to show, you have to measure how much money you are making to them by using your product, okay? So that's example here. If I'm selling you a new ingredient with more viscosity, what does that mean in terms of benefits? Is that in this specific production, I'm going to use less plasticizers and it's going to damage less your filter. So, and also better machine output. So I have 3 levers of better improvement to your process. So, and I have to measure each and every one of them. How much more am I going to give to you? That's the idea. Well, if you read Harvard Business Review 2 or 3 years ago, you probably saw that for B2B, there are like 40 value drivers in the B2B arena. The thing is, I revisit each and every one of those, and many of them are very difficult to measure, to really show your customers, okay, that's how much you're getting out of this. So based on our experience, what really can be measurable are those five circles that we're seeing here. So if you offer to your customer a lower price than your competitor, that's value for your customer. I'm paying less, okay? Number two, you may offer a lower cost. What does that mean? Well, maybe my product is not the cheaper, but my freight and the cost of use or whatever gets at a lower cost to you than my next best alternative, for example. So that's also a value that I can measure, right? Number three, my product gives you a better output. So you improve your production. Let's say I'm a fertilizer company. By using my fertilizer, you're going to get more crop at the end. Okay, can you measure that? Can you prove that? Can you show me the money? Then you have number three in terms of value. Number four, you can charge higher prices by using my product. A good example would be Intel. Nowadays, NVIDIA, right? By using my products, and actually they put a stamp in the computer, you are going to pay as a consumer more. So you can show the computer manufacturers that use my product, and you can get higher prices at the end. So that's also value. Or number five, let's say I'm the leader of the market, and by buying my product, you're going to sell more. So you're going to get more sales. That's also something that you can show, you can prove, and demonstrate. And actually, any of those are valid claims. For example, we work for a beer company here in the market, and what we are offering was completely different from my competitor was offering. What my competitor was offering, they were the market leaders. So they were saying, okay, I can squeeze your margin because you're going to get more cash margin because I have like 60% of market share. So I have more sales by doing business with me. Customers are going to order more of my brands of beer, and you're going to get more sales. So work with me, even though I squeeze your margins as a retailer. On the other hand, I was working with the second player and say, you know what? I cannot offer you more sales because I'm the second player, but I can offer you a higher price. So my brand is a little bit more premium than my most important brands of my competitors. So you can make more money for any unit that you sell from my beer. So why not using my brands in your retailer, in your restaurant, or whatever. So what I'm showing here is that one company was claiming number five, whereas another company was claiming number four. Both were true, both were valid, and customers could decide which value do I prefer. Okay, so do I prefer cash margin? Do I prefer percentage margin, for example? That was the case. So what I ask you is to define where is your differential value. Where can you bring value to your customer? Show that, measure that, and then you're going to be fine. Okay. What else can we use to find out what the value do I have? Usually, perceived value surveys. And here, what I see very often is that many companies just use conjoint analysis. But conjoint analysis can answer some pricing questions, but not all. And the idea here is really not to go one by one to explain how they are, but I can say, for example, importance performance. When do we use those? When we want to compare ourselves to our competitors, trying to create a value map. That's when we use importance performance. When do we use Van Westendorp surveys? When we want to find out what's the price range that we should be acting into the market. When should I use Gabor Granger? When I want to create a price demand curve, for example. So it's like an option where I'm going to ask customers how much are they willing to pay for a certain product. Monadic studies, I like that very much. It's like the way we do that, we get our competitor and their offering and their price, and I change my prices. So, okay, let's say a car, for example, my competitor car and my car, and then I start to change my prices lower than my competitor, higher than my competitor, and I assess their preferences. Which car would you buy? And then I can create the right price positioning into the market. And then conjoint analysis, where I like to use it when I want to find out attributes or my product when I want to understand pieces of it, not the entire product. But okay, again, let's say that the example was the car. How much a brand of the car is worth for my competitor? Is it 5% more than my competitor or no? So that's the idea when I use conjoint analysis as a pricing perceived value survey. Okay. Before we end this chapter, my last question to you is, how do you want your customer to feel? Happy, smiley, or sad, almost crying like this one? I hope everybody was saying, okay, Fred, we want our customers happy, and that's the right answer, right? Happy with our products, services, customer services, delivery, everything, happy. And what about in relation to your prices? Now we don't want them sad again, because if they're sad, they're not going to buy from us. They're going to buy from somebody else. But if we feel that customers are happy with us, then we have a big opportunity, because probably we are leaving money on the table. When do I know when I'm leaving money on the table? For example, we are hired a few times when customers or companies do net promoter score, NPS surveys, and price is the number one complaint. Price has to be the number one complaint, because again, who does not want to buy what you like to buy for less? Customers should be complaining about price, because if they're not complaining about prices, probably we are giving prices too low to them. Okay. And if they're complaining of prices, but they're still buying from us, that's perfect. Probably you have a very good pricing strategy in place. Customers are willing to buy, even though they perceive it as a little bit expensive. That's ideal in terms of profitability. So what's the answer? Customers should accept prices. Accept is the word. Okay. Let's move to commercial policies. So if you take a look at this image, and if you feel that your negotiations are like that, that's what we call in economic theory a zero-sum game. What does that mean? Every dollar I give to my customer, I'm losing it. And those are the typical negotiations. Sometimes I get involved on those as well when I'm selling my projects. The purchase department start to say, oh, lower your price, and then I have to try to negotiate other variables rather than just price, because then I'm on a zero-sum game. And what's the idea out of a commercial policy? Is really to create incentives in order to negotiate in a more strategic way. Think about, remember when I talked about segmentation, buying behavior, think about the behavior you want to stimulate in your customers. Let's say you want more frequency. That's was the example I used on the segmentation. Okay, so what's the incentive then? If you buy with more frequency from my company, I can give you a discount. That's the idea. But you may think about, okay, I want a better portfolio. I want more share of wallet. I want more product exposure in the retail. What do you want? Based on what do you want in terms of behavior, then you create the incentive. And then you provide that to your sales team. Your sales teams are not negotiating just price. They say, okay, I can give you price as long as you give me something in exchange. Those something in exchange are the incentives that should be linked strategically to what you want out of your consumer or customer behavior. That's the idea behind commercial policies when it's well done, well executed. One thing that I always try to check is if my customer, the projects we do, the company has a commercial policy. You may not have one, and then sales team is just negotiating prices as they please. Okay, that happens too. But if you have one, how much business are you doing inside your commercial policy? If you're doing up to 10% outside of your commercial policy, you are fine, because the real market will always have to deal with some exceptions. Okay, but if you are having like 10 to 30% exceptions, I mean, you are in risk. Be aware of that, that it's not going to be sustainable for longer, your commercial policy. But if you're doing more than 30% of deals outside of your commercial policy, then you no longer have one. The market already knows you negotiate, you go beyond what you say that is your maximum discount and things like that. So another way to see where your money is going is through a price waterfall. That's a very good way also to understand where are those discounts going. So that's a classic in terms of pricing, helps us to define if you have a commercial policy or not. One thing that I don't like to see is like discount, just one line, a big one, a big chunk that you don't know what does that is. So the idea here is really to link discount to something in exchange, okay? And another idea here is to use both on invoice and off invoice. Off invoice, you may name it rebates, cashback, bonuses. Usually those are linked more towards a long-term contract. So after you perform 1 year, that behavior could be growth, could be product mix or what have you. Again, thinking about behavior, and then you compensate your customer by reaching or meeting those targets. That's the idea on off invoice. You give them afterwards. On invoice is at the moment of the negotiation. So you have an incentive to give something to your customer in order for them. It can be like minimum volume for that order, or improve the size of the order, or include another product, and then you can give immediately the discount. That's the on invoice approach. Best practice for me, you can use a little bit of both. Because you have incentives. Because if you use just off invoice, what may happen? Customers may perceive that I'm just going to see some benefit out of this at the end of the quarter or at the end of the year sometimes, and that may be perceived as too much time further down. On the other hand, the on invoice, you can guarantee right now certain discounts. And depending on the country, you may have tax incentives by doing on invoice as well, because your invoice is going to be with lower prices affecting your taxes as well. Okay, so let's move to price elasticity, and I have to be very objective here. Well, the formula is very simple, right? Is the variation, percentage variation of volume over percentage variation of price. Think about a price reduction of 10% and a volume increase of 20. So 20 over 10, you're going to see 2. 2 is an elastic product. On the other hand, the same 10% drop may just change 5% your volume in terms of growth. So 5 over 10 is going to be half, and half is going to be inelastic. Well, the way I just showed, it's very simple. However, if you use or try to calculate elasticity in that way, probably you're going to get numbers that are not going to fit well. Based on our experience, one way to improve that is to use logarithm. So you use the log of volume over the log of price, because they mathematically they treat better percentage variances. But you can evolve out of that as well. One thing that we learn over time is that if you have market share is a better measure than volume. And why is that? Because you may see your volume growing, but the market is growing as well. So, if you read market share, then you are eliminating that market growth component, right? For the same reason, prices, we should be using real prices, not nominal prices. And probably in the US, that was not a big issue because inflation was very low for many years, like 1-2% a year. But once you are hitting like 7-8%, you may not say from one year to another that, oh, my prices were raised by 10%. If inflation was 8, your real price increase was just 2%, not 10%. So you have to take into consideration real price increases, not nominal price increases. That's another alternative. And then you have other techniques, more sophisticated techniques. You may use regressions. You may use Monte Carlo approach, where you're going to change many variables millions of times to isolate price and volume. So there are techniques that can be very complex in order to be more assertive. The importance here is really to be assertive. Elasticity or the demand curve can have different shapes. Actually, one shape that we see very often that's not in the graph is like in steps, right? So you have like those magic prices, like, and what I'm saying here, maybe a product that's selling by $8.99 or $9.99 is going to have the same elasticity, but once you go to $10.29, then you are going to be very effective because of this price barrier, psychological price barrier of $10, for example. So you see a lot of elasticities that are going to be like steps. You may also think about elasticity in a qualitative way, and this graph shows it a little bit. So you may think about, okay, if I have many competitors, many substitutes, my product tend to be more elastic. And you can make an evaluation using those factors to see, okay, is my product more elastic or less elastic in a qualitative way? And usually that helps as well to find out what's your elasticity, because at the end we don't want to find a final number. Actually, we want to just understand how sensitive to price changes is my product. Is really sensitive? Okay, I have to be take care of it. If it's not, okay, I can increase prices profitably. Another thing that's important about elasticity, depending on the direction of the price move you are doing, it may have different elasticities. Let's think about a product that's the leader in their market. If you increase their prices, usually they are less elastic when you are promoting a leader, a brand leader in the market. When you are promoting it, it shows a lot of elasticity. It's the product that everybody wants to buy, and especially if it's in a cheaper price now with this promotion. So high elasticity. But when you increase the price, it's just the opposite. It's kind of inelastic. So think about that too. Depending on how you're moving your price, you're going to see different elasticities. And one thing that I have to say about elasticity is that it does not always follow the economic theory that the higher the price, the lower the demand. And I can prove this. If we're doing this online, live, I would ask you, okay, you need important eye surgery, which doctor would you pick? And usually like 90% of the room would say Dr. C, which is the most expensive doctor. So why do you believe that, oh, the lower the price, the more the demand? That's not always the case. In fact, many times that's not the case. In many situations, many categories, the highest price is the product that's the leader of the market. So think about that. So elasticity follows some different logic. It's not pure economic theory here, okay? So understand your product elasticity is important. Again, you may not attach to a number, but is it sensitive? Is it not? In which direction I'm moving my price? That may change your elasticity as well. So that's what I'm saying. Think about estimates, not the actual number. The actual number is going to vary depending on the method you're going to use, but usually they're going to show the same direction. That's a very elastic product, or that's an inelastic product, regardless the number that each method is going to show you. And that's why we're always suggesting use at least two methods. You may use one qualitative, one quantitative, or two quantitative methods, or three methods in order to check, just to check, to have a reference. Okay, every method is showing me that this product is very sensitive to price changes. Okay, you learn it, use it. And again, it's important to know, but don't overemphasize it. What I'm saying here is that there are some companies, especially some retailers or consumer goods, that want to know, I mean, the number and believe that that's written in stone and that's the elasticity. No, it varies. If your competitor changes their prices, if you're a main offender, your elasticity is already changed. So it's a very dynamic number to be, really written in stone and just use it for everything. Okay. Well, let's move on to revenue management and price optimization. And that's where you can answer the third question that I made at the beginning. So what's the maximum the customer is going to pay? And you need some dynamic prices to test the market, to learn, and then to exploit the market. What's behind it? In the literature, you're going to find it as the multi-armed bandit. And the strategies to test prices, you're going to read about epsilon first, which is the idea to explore the market, to learn the market response for different prices. and then the epsilon greedy strategy, which is really then to focus on the price that's going to get you the best return. And I'm going to show you what best return means, because it may be the most revenues or it may be most profitability, depends on what you want to get. And that's also what we call the price frontier. In other words, the price range that you should be operating. So again, what's the customer maximum willingness to pay of your product? And then an example, how much would you be paying for this hotel room in a nice beach, let's say Cancun? If I say $100, probably most of you are going to raise your hands. And as I'm going up, like $200, a few of you are no longer going to be willing to pay. And 300, 400, so on and so forth, up to a point that nobody else is buying. What I'm trying to create here, really to learn a price demand curve in that situation. That's the idea. And when we are dealing with dynamic prices and that type of approach, our revenues now are just based on probabilities. So how I'm going to estimate the revenues I'm going to get is the price that I'm going to test times the probability of the willingness to pay of that customer be higher or equal to the price I'm charging. Because if the willingness to pay is lower, I'm going to lose that sale. That's the idea behind pricing optimization. How do we do that? Actually, you have to create a demand curve, and that is based on a project that we did. So as you can see here at 204, we are selling almost 100% of the quotes. As we were raising our prices, what you can see in volume, we're dropping, right? Another way to see this same data, the price response curve, same numbers, same prices, but now with the volume that I got in the previous slide, I can calculate how much revenues I'm getting. So if I want to maximize based on revenues, I already know my number, my price, $222, for example. But probably to maximize my margin, there's no data here, but probably that would be the best price to go with. Okay, so that's the idea behind price optimization through dynamic prices. And that's why it's so important for us to be testing the market if you have the ability to do so. And how can we maximize it? Well, there are two ways to maximize it. First objective function is to maximize the contribution margin. Okay, and then we use this formula. I don't have time to explain this, but you're going to understand easily, I can guarantee. And then you can maximize revenues, okay, which is the demand times price. And with that, we can calculate what we call the efficient frontier. The first step is really to test prices and evaluate or measure the demand, how many units I can sell at different prices, right? With that, I can calculate the revenue I'm going to get and the profit I'm going to get. And as you can see, a lot of price differences here, from $123 to $420, getting me different levels of revenues, going up and then going down, and also profits can also go up and then can go down as well. By doing so, I can plot and get all this price and demand, revenues and profits curve, okay, which is represented by this graph. But some of those prices, I should be never using them again, because they do not maximize either revenues or profits. So what do? We analyze the data to set what's my efficient frontier. And I'm just going to operate prices inside this price range. If I want more profits or if I want more revenues, it depends then on my pricing strategy or what I want out of this product, okay? And here I can show you, as I start to increase prices here, my demand drops, okay? But take a look here. My revenue, maximum revenue, is at $261. You can check. Everything else is below that level. So that's the price if I want to maximize revenues. But profits, no, profits keep growing as I grow prices. Take a look. Up to a point of $69,000. When I increase to 339, then my profit starts to lose because I'm starting to lose more customers. That's the idea behind efficient frontier, dynamic prices, and how I can optimize prices. Okay. You may say, Fred, but I cannot test so many prices. I'm not a retailer. I cannot, or online business. I have quotes, I have bids, and much less data to analyze. How can I do that? Can I do such a thing? Yes, with certain differences, but now we are talking about the bid response curve. And by bid response curve, we cannot create the same type of analysis that we're doing there, because will not have enough data to do so. But what can we do? We can use a logistic function. And by using a logistic function, I'm using probabilities. What's the probability of winning or losing a quote based on that? And then again, that's a different set of data, but again, data out of projects. And then I'm testing different prices. Like I participate in 15 quotes using this price, and then another 15 quotes using these other different prices. And what I'm showing here, in order for me to get statistical significance, I have to test the same price a certain number of times. Otherwise, I still don't have enough data to come up with any conclusion. Well, with 17 bids using 5 different prices, I can create then a logistic curve. And with this logistic curve, I can try to find out the optimal price. There's a very simple way to do it. How you can do it? You can just calculate how many times I win at which price, and then it's going to give you the maximum revenue. Okay, if you have the cost data, you can input in the system and also give you the best price or the best profit, the price with the best profit. And here's very simple, right? If you make the calculation, you're going to find out that is $3,300 times 9 is going to maximize your revenues. And again, for a simplistic way of solving this, that's good enough. But if you're going to use like probabilities, logistic regressions, I do not have the time to go over that, you're going to find a number that's slightly different. Actually, in this case specifically, it's going to be like 7% higher than 3,300, and it's going to be the optimum price for you to make the bids. That's the idea behind using probabilities to come up with the best optimal price that you can have with data. Okay, so but I'm just showing you the example of one product. Imagine if you have like 40,000 SKUs, and that was a case of one of our customers, or a B2B with just 4,000 SKUs but 16,000 customers. Take a look on that. Millions of pricing decisions that you have to make. I mean, you're either using a software or optimization system, or you cannot do it manually. It's impossible. It's impossible. And add to that different channels and things like that. So really, if you want to go optimization, you need an algorithm, you need machine learning, you need artificial intelligence, and things like that. But it's possible. That's what I want to convey. That's just a representation on how we do that. And we can develop algorithms, customized algorithms. There are large organizations, like the largest auto part retailer in Brazil uses a pricing algorithm and system that we developed from scratch to them, and can optimize prices like 190,000 SKUs for like hundreds of stores. And we optimize by store because each and every store has different parts, different customers' behaviors, different competitors, different willingness to pay out of the market, economic condition, and things like that. So you must think about segmenting by store in this case, right? And you can do it weekly or daily or what have you. So it's really why we should optimize prices: to make more money in a very effective way. That's the sum of this graph. Last topic, change management to support implementation. I'm running out of time. How can we be successful? Just by implementing. To be very honest, what really changed the game is when we define a very good strategy, take into considerations the things I said, and also you are able to implement what you decide to do. Because everything else in the middle is something that can be a little bit better here or there, but it's not going to make a huge difference. But if you can really implement what you plan to implement, that can be really impactful to your business. So think about how you plan your implementation. The first leg is really planning. Definitely you're not going to follow everything you plan, but it's important to plan. And then you have to guarantee the execution. Okay, you have to incentivize the sales force if needed. Maybe fire some of them because that's my experience as well. In a few projects, I actually had to get rid of sales director that he was not supporting the changes. But those are the tough decisions you must do. It's a list of things that we usually do in project implementation, and lead the change. So we need support from top management, the pricing department, or if you have a third party like consultants to help, they have to lead that change. We follow like Kotler's change model. And what's really important based on our experience, top management support. If the leadership of your organization is not buying pricing, forget about it. It's not going to happen. It has to be one of the top projects of your organization. It has to be prioritized. Otherwise, it's going to be lost among so many other initiatives that your organization is having. We have to have alignment of metrics and incentives. It cannot be something based on just one department, for example. It can go against other department objectives. It's going to generate conflict. It's going to damage the quality of the project. IT is critical. There is no way you can do a great pricing work without IT support, systems, and things like that. And finally, keep celebrating the achievements. It cannot be a big bang as well. You have to go through the journey, improving things as we move forward. It's important in that direction. Well, also in governments, you may have to assess your processes. I mentioned a few of them here. Which of those that I say that you say, oh, I'm doing exactly like you said, or even better, great, you're doing fine. You deserve a 4 out of 4 in terms of grade. But if you're not doing it or you don't have it, then it's a 0 or a 1, room for improvement. That's the idea also. So think about your processes. Remember that the graph I showed at the beginning, like 6 pillars, those are the process that you should be evaluating to see if you have more opportunities or not. So just to summarize everything, for a strategy, know where you are and where you want to go. Otherwise, it's like Alice in the Wonderland. If you don't know where you want to go, anyway, we'll make it, right? Segmentation, think about how you can capture value or segment your customers based on their buying behavior. That's what's really important. Value-based pricing is the alternative or the option for you to capture your unique differentiated attribute, okay? But has to be unique and you have to sustain it. That's important. Commercial policies, why is that matters? Because you should not be negotiating in a zero-sum game, or in other words, just losing money for your customers, just negotiating price. You should create incentives aligned to your strategy to negotiate, always asking something in return. Every time you have to give something, either price or you have to ask something in return. And create it in a very simple way, very transparent way, because you can easily communicate to your sales force, and then your sales force is going to be able to negotiate in a more transparent way with your customers. Dynamic prices or revenue management, well, get data and turn it into pricing knowledge. I hope I show you how you can do it. It's a very hot topic nowadays. Many companies experimenting with that. Like I said, nowadays it's much easier to develop your own pricing algorithm and keep changing prices into the market. Either if you're doing quotes, price quotes, you structure that, make it in a very intelligent way so you can get meaningful data to make conclusions and then set the right prices, and then guarantee implementation through change management. So otherwise, everything that we said is zero value for you. Okay, so don't wait. I have done projects in companies that were doing fine and we're just trying to improve. And then it's a very good vibe in those projects, just improvement, capturing more value. On the other hand, I have done projects with companies that were doing, bad results or going down, and much more stressful, right? Because then you rely on that, you depend on that. It's much more pressure, tensions, and sometimes it's tough to make pricing decisions when we are in that situation. Okay, so man the roof before it rains, I think would be a good recommendation. And the second comment here, choose your battles. Like I said, I mean, I just presented 7 topics here, could be 20. You cannot address everything at once. So which are the ones that you feel that you need the most? And then you start by those, the low hanging fruit, what can brings me a lot of return out of my investment, start with that, celebrate and move forward. So choose your battles, don't try to do everything at once. It's not going to work. So if you like what I'm saying here, we have a book that was translated into English. It's what is called Pricing Architects. Those were 20 interviews with pricing directors, revenue management directors from leading companies like airline industry, retailers, manufacturing of different sectors, large companies, all international, most of them international companies, top companies. I interviewed like 20 professionals, top pricing professionals in Brazil, and it was translated. I recommend you take a look. It's an interesting book. It's free. Just download in our website. And for our website, that's the address, quantisinternational.com. That's where you are going to find everything in English, even the book translated. We have an office in the US since July, just a month from now. Actually, 2 addresses. One is our fiscal address, and the other one is our real office for customers and things like that. That's based on Houston. And the reason one is in Austin because we opened this online, and the company just opened in the capital of the state. So that's why we have an address in Austin, but it's just a virtual office. The same thing we have in Brazil, actually. We have a fiscal address, and then we also have an office where we receive customers and our consultants work. So feel free to visit our website, get some more information. Thank you for your audience. It was a pleasure to share with you some of the things we do. And feel free to give us a call if you want to talk further any of the topics, either in the US or Brazil. Thank you all. See you soon. Bye-bye. Oh, by the way, I want to invite just this little, if you like what I said, that was a very quick summary of what I'm going to be talking during the next Professional Pricing Society that's going to happen in Atlanta in October. So take a look on their website. I will have a workshop, a 1-day workshop. I will get in much more detail in those topics and some other topics that I could not cover at this time. And I think you're going to enjoy the event. Okay. Thank you again. See you soon. Hope to see you soon. Bye.